to get my back blown out in peace. You think I got time to talk about a divorce that's a year old?
What if everything you believed about your life, every memory you trusted, every relationship you thought you understood, every decision you felt confident in, collapsed in a single, quiet moment? Not with a dramatic warning or a long buildup, but with a simple, clinical statement that carries devastating weight. The DNA doesn't match. No shouting, no chaos at first, just silence. The kind of silence that stretches, that presses in, that forces you to sit with a truth you never saw coming. That's where Tiana's story truly begins. Not with drama, not with speculation, but with a fracture so deep it changes everything that follows. Before that moment, Tiana's life was complicated, but it was a kind of complication she believed she could manage. There were emotions involved, overlapping histories, and two men, Iman and Aaron, who were both deeply connected to her in ways that made her situation far from simple. Still, there was a sense, however fragile, that things would eventually settle. The uncertainty surrounding her child's paternity wasn't ideal, but it felt temporary. A test would be done, the truth would come out, and from there they would figure things out. It was a situation many might find overwhelming, but to Tiana, it was at least understandable. That belief didn't survive the results. When the DNA test came back, it didn't point to Iman. It didn't point to Aaron. It didn't offer clarity or direction. Instead, it erased both possibilities entirely. In an instant, the narrative she had been living inside, the one where the answer was simply waiting to be confirmed, fell apart. Because if neither of the two men she believed could be the father actually was, then the situation wasn't just unresolved. It was something else entirely. Something far more unsettling. It meant there was a missing piece, a gap in the story that no one had accounted for. And that gap demanded answers. Tiana's reaction wasn't calculated or controlled. It couldn't be. There are moments in life where composure simply isn't possible, where the weight of what you're facing overrides any attempt to appear steady. This was one of those moments. The shock wasn't just emotional, it was disorienting. It forced her to question not just the present, but the past. Memories that once felt clear now seemed uncertain. Decisions she thought she understood now carried doubt. She spoke out, but even her words reflected the confusion she was trying to process. She admitted she hadn't expected this, hadn't even considered it as a real possibility. The test that was supposed to give her certainty had instead taken it away. But while Tiana was still trying to understand what had happened, the world around her didn't wait. The story spread quickly, faster than she could control, faster than she could fully process. What began as a deeply personal revelation became a public spectacle almost overnight. Social media amplified every detail, every reaction, every fragment of information. People who had no direct connection to Tiana suddenly became invested in her story, analyzing it, debating it, building theories around it. The situation was no longer just hers. It belonged to an audience, and that audience had questions. So many questions. At the center of those questions were three people now bound together by uncertainty. Iman, who had been part of the journey from the beginning, now faced a reality that didn't fit any expectation he had prepared for. There is a particular kind of confusion that comes from being removed from a situation you thought you were deeply part of, and that's where he found himself. Aaron too had to confront the same unexpected outcome. His response, when it came, carried a quiet weight, disappointment, confusion, and an effort to remain composed in a situation that offered no clear direction. And then there was Tiana, standing at the center of it all, not as someone holding answers, but as someone surrounded by questions she couldn't yet answer. As the initial shock began to settle into something heavier and more sustained, attention naturally turned backward. People began revisiting Tiana's past, her relationships, her choices, the timeline of events that had led to this moment. What once seemed like a complicated but understandable situation now appeared far more layered. Moments that had passed without much scrutiny were now being examined closely, as if the truth might be hidden somewhere in the details. Was there something that had been overlooked? Had there been signs that didn't seem important at the time? Or was this truly as sudden and unexpected as it appeared? The truth is, human relationships are rarely as straightforward as they seem from the outside. They are shaped by emotion, by timing, by context, by decisions made in moments that don't always feel significant until much later. In Tiana's case, those complexities were now being pulled into the light, whether she was ready for that or not. While the public tried to piece together a narrative, the emotional impact on those closest to her continued to deepen. Her family, who had been part of her journey in a much more intimate way, were left trying to process a reality that didn't align with anything they expected. Shock gave way to concern, and concern to a kind of quiet uncertainty about what would come next. They supported her, stood by her, offered what stability they could. But even within that support, there were questions that didn't have easy answers. Iman's family faced their own version of that uncertainty. They had stood by him, believed in his role in the situation, and now found themselves having to reassess everything. Aaron's family experienced similar turmoil, their reactions shaped by a mix of emotional investment and confusion. Across both sides, there was a shared sense of something fundamental being disrupted. Not just a belief about paternity, but a belief about how the situation itself was understood. And still, the biggest question remained unanswered. Online, the intensity only grew. Social media became a constant stream of opinions, theories, and reactions. Some people expressed empathy, recognizing that life doesn't always unfold in clean, predictable ways. Others were more critical, questioning how such a situation could even happen. Speculation filled the gaps left by the lack of concrete answers. And among those speculations, one idea began to gain more attention than the others: the possibility of a third person. At first, it was just a theory, one of many. But as time passed and no clear explanation emerged, it began to feel less like speculation and more like a possibility that couldn't be ignored. Because if the known options had been ruled out, then logically, there had to be an unknown one. Days later, Tiana returned with an emotional video, and while it didn't provide answers, it added something else: context. She spoke openly about the toll the situation had taken on her, about the difficulty of navigating something so personal under constant public scrutiny. There was a vulnerability in her words that resonated with many people. She didn't try to present herself as someone in control of the situation. Instead, she acknowledged the confusion, the uncertainty, the emotional weight of not knowing. She made one thing clear: her focus was her child. Beyond that, she refused to speculate. She wouldn't name anyone, wouldn't confirm or deny the growing theories. It was, she insisted, something she needed to understand privately before sharing publicly. For some, that response felt honest and necessary. For others, it only added to the sense that there was more beneath the surface. Iman and Aaron followed with their own responses, each reflecting a similar tone: measured, thoughtful, but undeniably affected. Both acknowledged the situation, both expressed a desire to remain supportive, and both, in their own ways, revealed the difficulty of processing something that had no clear explanation. For a brief moment, it seemed like the situation might settle into a kind of uneasy pause. And then it shifted again. The leak changed everything. Private messages, unverified but widely circulated, introduced a new layer to the story. They hinted at communication with someone outside the known narrative, someone who had not been publicly acknowledged before. The details were unclear, but the implication was powerful. If true, the messages suggested that the situation was even more complex than anyone had realized. The idea of a third man was no longer just speculation. It was a possibility with enough weight to reshape the entire narrative. And with that possibility came a new wave of tension. Because if there was someone else, then the story that had been told so far was incomplete. And if the story was incomplete, then what else might be missing? At this point, the situation has evolved beyond a simple question of paternity. It has become a layered, emotionally charged puzzle involving trust, memory, perception, and truth. Every person involved is now navigating not just what happened, but what it means. For Tiana, that meaning is deeply personal. It touches her identity as a mother, her credibility in the public eye, and her relationships with the people who have stood beside her, whether in support or in doubt. There is also a growing pressure that comes not just from within her circle, but from the outside world. The longer the mystery remains unsolved, the more intense the speculation becomes. people begin to fill in gaps with assumptions, and assumptions, repeated often enough, begin to feel like facts. That is the dangerous space Tiana now occupies. A space where silence can be interpreted in countless ways, and where every move she makes is analyzed for hidden meaning. At the same time, there is an undeniable human element that grounds this entire situation. Beneath the headlines, beneath the theories, beneath the constant noise, there is a child at the center of it all. A child whose identity is now tied to a question that has yet to be answered. That reality adds a layer of urgency, but also a layer of responsibility. Because whatever the truth turns out to be, it will not just resolve a mystery, it will shape a life. And so, the story continues to unfold, not in a straight line, but in unpredictable turns. Each development adds complexity, rather than clarity. Each answer seems to lead to new questions. It is a reminder that real life does not follow clean narratives, and that truth, when it finally emerges, is often more complicated than anyone expects. For now, everything remains suspended in uncertainty. The truth is out there, somewhere within the fragments of memory, evidence, and untold details. Whether it will come to light soon or remain hidden a while longer is something no one can say for sure. But one thing is certain. When it does emerge, it will not just answer the question of who the Father is. It will redefine everything that came before it, and everything that comes after.